I have this problem, let's say, that I go to get a GPO contract. What I'm hearing is I don't have enough market share. But then from the members of the GPOs, I can't get in because I don't have a GPO contract, right? So what do I do in that scenario?
Yeah, it's a chicken or egg story, right? How do I gain market share without a contract? There's different ways. I think they're a great way to get access to market share. They can do contracting at their own, their own timetables. They're looking to bring value to their members, and they can add you on if it makes sense, and that'll go a long way on the next contract cycle for sure.
So why did they exist to begin with?
It's a good question. I think it's a tough one too to answer, but each one of them are very different.
Okay, so Dan, I have this problem, let's say, that I go to get a GPO contract. What I'm hearing is I don't have enough market share. But then from the members of the GPOs, I can't get in because I don't have a GPO contract, right? So what do I do in that scenario?
Yeah, it's a chicken or egg story, right? Just how do I gain market share without a contract? There's different ways. Your product's going to give you your sales team. You're gonna have the attention of customers. If you're presenting clinical outcomes, you're working with value analysis. They're always going to look at, do you have a contract or not? All right. So how do I get this contract? If you're having troubles. Well, let's just say you're coming new to market and you're mid cycle of a GPO contract even as well, right? There's other alternatives. The larger IDNs can do local contracting, but the other things we call them RPCs, regional purchasing coalitions, or the aggregation groups. I think they're a great way to get access to market share. They can do contracting at their own, their own timetables. Yes, they would probably follow a schedule close to the GPOs because they're very much part of the GPO. But if they find that you have value, that you have clinical resources, you've got great education, maybe you even offering, other like CE credits and stuff like that, right, as part of your packaging, things that they could really utilize, they're looking to bring value to their members. And they can add you on if it makes sense, right? They can add you midterm of a cycle. They could have open bids going that you could participate in. So what does that do? All right, so now I get part of a local GPO or an RPC. I think what happens is that you build clinical awareness with their memberships. And remember, when the actual GPO bid might come up, maybe that's 2 years from now. Now you have buy-in and support from a group that works very closely with their GPO. They're at the meetings, they're at the voting meetings, they're at the clinical meetings. So if you're making an impact with that membership at that RPC level or even a large IDN level, they're going to speak up and be like, hey, I use these guys, I have been, and they're doing very well for us, right? And here's some of the output that we've been able to get from them, or support that we've been able to get from them. And that'll go a long way on the next contract cycle for sure.
Yeah. So how would I find these regional purchasing coalitions if I'm not familiar with them already?
Yeah, they're out there. You can. I think the GPOs would share some of their larger groups. They're on the internet. You can use resources as your distributors to say, hey, who would you work with in these maybe areas? You can hire consultants or advisors to come in and who have relationships there already and can kind of fast track that conversation. And that might give you some more market share, quicker to market strategy out of the gate too.
Yeah. So why did they exist to begin with? If they've got the GPO contract and that's sort of their basis for purchasing, what do they get out of these regional coalitions?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's a tough one too to answer, but each one of them are very different, and they have a different kind of outreach. If you look at what the membership's made up of, some of them are surgery center based only. Some of them are rural hospital based. They have a very direct line of trying to support smaller hospitals. Some of them do everything, right? They'll have hospitals, and then they'll have pharmacy, and they'll have veterinarians, and they'll have long-term care and even DME, right? So they reach different dynamics and demographics at the same time of members. But what they do is they collectively look at, not everything's on contract, right? You got to remember that too. Not every product's on contract. Not every category exists at the GPO level. So what they'll do is they'll take a collective look at their members, and then they can negotiate maybe a stronger tier on a GPO level. So let's say, for example, your contract has 3 tiers. The aggregation can say, hey, listen, our members reaches 400 members or X million dollars in sales. We can give you a contract and we'll give you all the access, but you got to give us maybe your best tier pricing, right? So you got to decide if you're okay with that methodology, but they could use the GPO to get a better tier, not necessarily better pricing, but a better tier than maybe just what the one member would and they aggregate everything together, right? So that's one thing. And then 2 is maybe the category doesn't exist with the GPO, so they can source it and they can negotiate one price. So there's a unified price for their members, and they're bringing that service to the members. And other things too is, if like I said, if you offer education or other clinical services, they want to bring that too, right? They want their membership to feel like they're getting something more from their manufacturers and an industry partner versus just the best price.
Yeah. So do they have certain leaders, or are there certain positions within RPCs that I should be looking to engage with?
Yeah, it's going to be very similar to your IDNs, but you're going to have a contracting team. So it's kind of like that middle ground between an IDN and then the GPO itself, right? But you're going to have a contracting team. You're going to have a value analysis team. You're going to have a clinical team. You're going to have a sourcing, negotiations process. So really, I would depending on what, if it's purchase services or if it's medical device, right? And reaching out is who's in charge of sourcing this category, and then what's the clinical and value analysis process. And those are the 2 I would go to right away within those RPCs, and then have the conversations around where your product can be a differentiator, where it fits in, and then timetables. What is going to fit for them of what they're trying to source right now.
Great. And so in your experience, has that been the national accounts director, or is that field sales that's sort of doing that investigative work?
Depending on your structure, it should be the national accounts director. I mean, if your rep could be, if the sales team is all that the structure is for, say you're just getting started in this world, then absolutely, right, it's going to be. But your national accounts team should be the one having that conversation. Because what happens is that RPC or that local GPO is going to be representing over multiple states, right? So then you have one point person. And if you have one rep go in and then you have a rep responsible for multiple states and it's crossing lines, it gets like you don't have time to go, do everything. So having a national accounts or a health systems person as the point person, let them do the negotiation, let them bring in the right resources. And then when you launch it out, it's also a lot cleaner, because then you can bring all the reps together and the regions together and have a devised plan of how you would reach that membership across the country.
Yeah.
Or region.
That's great. So we started this conversation about trying to gain market share and utilizing the RPC potentially to do that. Could you summarize or add any additional points in this consideration of whether this is a good tactic or strategy for your company? Yeah,
I think it's also a good area for you to try out strategies, right? If is the pricing the right attractiveness, right? Is it too much? Is it too little? Do you need other tiers, or did you try out rebates, like growth rebates and incentives to tack onto it? So maybe you have a fair market price, but that you give everybody. But if you get X percentage commitment out of the RPC, could you give them a rebate? Or if there's if you get X amount of sales by the end of the year, you could give a rebate. Or you could try out some strategies of what works for you and your company and what you're financially can plan out and do. But why not try it on something smaller scale versus going to the masses of the GPO and not be really ready for it?